so that's when I left the NFL. I moved to Canada, became a janitor of an organization, slept on the basement floor of a boiler room for the next 5 years of my life. When we are top heavy, when we have only focused on this external pursuit of success and there hasn't been any internal growth, at some point, and this was my experience, the weight of the success that you create in your life will become the very thing that fractures your life. The internal growth is oftentimes the prerequisite to the sustainability of your next level of success in your life.
Welcome back to Nevada Realtors Today, your place for timely updates on the news and trends that matter to realtors in the Silver State. Now let's join your Nevada Realtors President, Brandon Roberts, and Nevada Realtors CEO, Tiffany Banks, for today's episode of Nevada Realtors Today.
Okay, we are joined today by the amazing Caleb Campbell. As a West Point graduate, Army officer, and NFL linebacker, he has always had an inner drive to make something of himself, not to just reach expectations, but to surpass expectations. And before I go into a little bit more about you, we want to hear about you from your point of view. What does it look like to be Caleb Campbell?
Well, first, Tiffany, Brandon, thank you for having me. I love that we get to do this today. And yeah, that's a big question, Tiff. As you said, I have always had that inner drive to exceed expectations, and I loved it, and I still have that inner drive. I'm just in a different relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that inner drive, that need to be somebody, that need to excel, that need to, step into a greater measure of significance. That need, it took me years to realize, was really coming from a deeply rooted fear, a fear of not being enough. And so the motivation was always, if I could just do more, be more, achieve more, then I can outwork this internal sense of chaos that I was feeling. And that motive, like that motivation has served me really well, all the way from the Texas Panhandle, scoring the game-winning touchdown in the community-wide all-star championship football game, which people still talk about today. No big deal.
Can we actually watch that somewhere?
Yeah, well, I'll try to find it.
Okay.
See if I have a home video. And I was inducted into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame, and then got the Division I college football scholarship to play at the United States Military Academy at West Point freshman year, all conference. Sophomore year, had a standout season, was one of the top collegiate football players in all of college football on my position. My junior year, had the honor of putting a C on my uniform, which stood for captain. And then my senior year, I find myself arguably where every football player just dreams about being, and that's in the iconic Radio City Music Hall in New York City, where I was surrounded by 10,000 screaming fans at the NFL draft. And, the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, he walked to a podium to announce to me, the screaming fans, and I think it was 36 million people tuning in from their homes, that, the Detroit Lions had just selected me in the NFL draft, making me the second player out of the history of West Point to ever get selected, and the first player ever given them permission to play and serve simultaneously because of a new policy that was implemented by the Department of Defense my sophomore year at the academy. And I will remember that moment, but I'll definitely remember what happened just a few short minutes after getting drafted, when I was on national television. And I was doing, at the time, an interview with ESPN host Trey Wingo. And Trey, he looked at me and he said something I'll never forget. He said, "Caleb, I need you to know you're not just another athlete." He said, "You're America's athlete. You're a West Point graduate, you're an Army officer, and now you're an NFL athlete. How does it feel?" And I'm fully aware Trey meant well when he said that, but truthfully, I heard nothing good in that statement. When I heard is, "Caleb, failure is not an option. Caleb, better have it together all the time. Caleb, don't you dare be weak." And so I'd say all of this because I was now entering into this ecosystem, the NFL, where there was just such a heightened sense of pressure and expectation that was now on my life. And that fear of not being enough, it began to really, cause a lot of internal drama, a lot of internal chaos because of the pressure and the stress of that environment. It was just kind of like a pressure cooker, and that fear started growing stronger and stronger and stronger by the day. And it got pretty intense in the NFL, where it took a toll on my performance and my morale, and more than anything, it took a toll on my mental and my emotional well-being. I really, more than anything, just felt like a walking, talking imposter. Afraid that if people actually see the real me, they'll quickly see that I am the furthest thing from America's athlete. And you can only hide your truth for so long before it starts to come out sideways. And that's exactly what started happening to me. And so that's when I left the NFL. in kind of a state of panic, knowing if something then changed and changed soon. It was only a matter of time before I'd be another statistic on the evening news. Through a strange series of events, which is just another story for another day, I moved to Canada, became a janitor of an organization, slept on the basement floor of a boiler room for the next 5 years of my life, sweeping floors, cleaning bathrooms, changing light bulbs, and really doing it in exchange for free therapy so that I could better understand not only just what happened to my life, but how I can better understand how I can move forward into my next personal best and not lose myself in the process, right? Step into that next level of evolution of success for my life, the next level of success professionally and personally, and love who I am in the process. And that's when I really started that work of the I often say there's the external achievement and then there's the internal expansion. And this was the second half of the internal expansion that I started to do the work around.
So let's just stop for a minute. And even though I know I've heard, like I know all these things about you, every time you share, I really have chills all over because I can picture all those moments for you and what you were living and thinking and all the things. Now when you get to the, your time as a janitor, but then like, I don't think I've heard you say before the length of time. Like you picture like a period, like, okay, like you moved in like, wow, like what a massive difference, right? Of going from like the highest point in anybody's career that most people will never achieve to sleeping on the floor as a janitor, but for 5 years.
I had to like resolve it in my heart to really commit to the process. And I think committing to the process, the question that I had to ask myself was, if this is the rest of my life, like if my healing, if my growth, if this season takes me the rest of my life, am I okay with it? And for the longest time, it was hell no, hell no, hell no. Like I need out of here. This sucks. This is not what I had on my vision board when I started that year. I'll tell you that. But there came a point where I finally I said, yeah, because this is the most important thing that I could do, the inner growth, the healing, the letting go, all of the invitations that I was being extended, that was the most important thing that I could do for my life. And so I finally got to that point of, radical commitment that if it does take me the rest of my life, I'm okay with it. And strangely enough, whenever I made that radical commitment, things accelerated, the growth accelerated, my life accelerated, like things began to change at a very rapid pace.
Well, it sounds like anything that you've been committed to, even if you weren't aware of that radical commitment, that it's been really like a theme your whole life, because think of all of the things you've been able to commit to accomplish. And I know now, you kind of, you're much different in your mindset of like easing into things rather than pushing. But in that way, and this isn't me analyzing you, but it kind of is.
No, it's
but in
good.
that way, that really is also still radical commitment, right? Because the radical commitment to evolving into like this next version of Caleb.
I love that. I feel seen, Tiffany.
Okay. I see you. You are incredible. You know that. And then you think about the ambition. And so I was actually just going back to, where I got cut off at the beginning because I wanted you to share about yourself. But you think about the ambition that you had, the determination and that relentless pursuit of success, the uncertainty, expectations, external and internal pressure. And then when you decided that I'm going to take this step back, did you think about those that you were impacting? Because I think so much of like being an athlete and, wanting to make your family proud and going to West Point and all these things, like it's so much about impacting the lives of others and probably a positive way. Did you think about the impact on the lives of others by you stepping back and going to such a it sounds like a dark place. Maybe it wasn't, but floor as a janitor sounds dark to me. But did you think about the impact you'd have on others in that moment?
That's a really good question. I don't honestly know if I've been asked that question before. And I think if I'm hearing the question correctly, I didn't think about other people necessarily in that moment. I was thinking about myself because I needed something that would really help anchor myself and save myself. I know that when I walked away, a lot of people were confused. A lot of high achieving, high performing, like we build our identity on the back of our willpower, and it serves us well. It's important, like hard work, ambition, willpower, persistence, perseverance, grit. It's all necessary. It's all important. And a lot of times, because our identity is built on the back of doing more, achieving more, being more, letting go feels like failure. Walking away feels like, weakness. It feels like waving the white flag and just screaming from the mountaintops, I'm not enough, or whatever it is, And I think a lot of people were confused by that. And I understand how some people can really see me walking away as a form of giving up. I really do understand that. But there's honestly, Tiffany, not another decision that I have made in my life that I am more proud of. And I'm proud of it because, what's that?
It wasn't giving up. It was like choosing yourself.
Yeah, I was choosing me. And for the first time, I prioritized really my well-being over the fear of what other people might think or say about me, or the expectations of others. And that alone would go on and radically transform my life. I have learned, and this is probably the same for a lot of high achieving individuals. I've learned for the longest time since I was just a young boy how to find my sense of belonging in this world through my performance. But this was the first time that I learned how to belong to myself without any performance. And that would radically change things for me.
That's so beautiful. Brandon, have you had any of those moments in your life?
I think we all do to some extent, right? And it sometimes when you're going through them, they feel like they're the darkest times. But yeah, when you look back, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to you because it leads you to where you are today.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Brandon. I have to say, it wasn't the end; it was the beginning to something new. It's like you get to these points in life where I call them divine ambushes. And what I mean by that is you're standing on some ground that feels steady and sturdy. All of your ducks are in a row. Things are going smoothly. And then boom, life happens. There's this massive disruption, some sort of unexpected event. Sometimes it's a loss of a loved one, a loss of a reputation, a loss of a way of life. And suddenly that very steady and sturdy ground you were standing on is now very shaky and wobbly. And everything that once was is no longer the way it once was. And that can be such a debilitating experience. But as I look back at my own life and as I continue to work with leaders, especially high achieving, high performing individuals who really want to excel professionally and personally throughout every facet of their lives, there comes a time where these disruptions or these ambushes happen because they have come not to happen to us, but like for us, in a sense where when that disruption happens, what it's doing is it's shaking loose all of the thought processes, the belief systems, all of the things that have gotten you to where you are today, but they're not going to get you to where you want to be, right? So you're being invited to expand, you're being invited to grow. And those disruptions are oftentimes the catalyst to the internal expansion, the internal growth that is the prerequisite for you to step into that next evolution of success for your lives.
I think when you frame it like that, and I've actually really tried to think about things like that, if this is happening for me, but in the moment, it doesn't feel good sometimes. In the moment,
it feels terrible.
You're like, this is happening for me. Why? Like, okay, please make it stop.
And I want to be clear, I am not co-signing on like toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not co-signing when the world is falling apart. You're just like, you gotta be happy today. I'm saying that when the fear hits, when the insecurity hits, when the failure hits, when the disruption comes and blows across the landscape of your life and everything's a disheveled mess. There's so much uncertainty and unpredictability. Don't rush your way out of it. Don't try to force your way through it. It's a gift. It's a gift because the tension of that moment is going to reveal, undoubtedly, if you're willing to listen, the internal shifts that need to take place. And it's not an obstacle in your way. It's not like preventing you from becoming the person you want to become. Like I often say this in the key, like it is the way. It's the way that we actually reach our fullest potential. Like, if we really think about it, it's in the moments when fear is screaming the loudest. It's in the moments when stress and overwhelm and failure is weighing you down. It's in the moments when self-doubt is whispering you're not enough once again. Our fullest potential actually lives in those moments. But what we oftentimes try to do is we try to jump over it, escape it, avoid it, achieve our way out of it. When we really, and what my heartbeat is just to help arm leaders and people with the tools and the resources and the understanding on how to be more present with it. Because that's where the real growth takes place. That's going to allow you to have the capacity to run even faster than you once ran and not burn out. To have the capacity to navigate the inevitable setbacks you're going to experience and not lose yourself in the process. To have the capacity to not just become a better leader, a better realtor, to become a better person. Like, that's where the magic happens.
Speaking of, we've been so blessed to have you actually work with our Nevada realtors and other realtors from across the country now. Over the last almost a year, we invited you to our December meetings last year to work with our board. And then we've also come to our leadership academy. And so you've actually gotten to firsthand work with a group of realtors that are saying, I want to be better. I don't know what that looks like, right? Like, I don't know, but help me, like, just show up. And by the way, when they come to our leadership program, they have no clue what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
We're just like, just come bring comfortable shoes. But, we don't tell them the growth. And I'm actually picturing your last session, and I'm like, they definitely were not picturing that, right?
Yeah.
They're coming up, but then how quickly in working with you, like, they're able to just like pull it back, right? Like, it's almost like there's this like desire, this like real desire for people to be seen right now and to like be this best version of themselves, not show up as somebody that like somebody else thinks they should be, right? And so, in you working with them, like, can you kind of give a little bit of insight of like, I know you work with all types of leaders, but like for our listeners who won't have an opportunity to work one-on-one, like, what are some of the tools or guides that you've taken, like, our realtors on a journey with, that they can maybe practice at home?
Oh, yes. Great question. I also love working with your realtors. Honestly, it's one of my favorite experiences. And you're right when you say like the curated group of individuals, not just the board, but I'm thinking of the leadership program, like that curated group of individuals, like such growth minded individuals. And it's so clear. And those are the most favorite rooms to be in. Like, when you are in an ecosystem or in a room with individuals who want to expand, like, sign me up. It's so much fun because everyone's on the same page, and I say all of that because that's probably one of my top, 3 speaking experiences that I've had over the last several years of speaking. But I think what makes those types of experiences so valuable is, and I think this goes for anyone, I don't have to tell anybody in that room, and this is probably with the most rooms that I find myself in, I don't have to tell anybody in the rooms that I speak in to try harder or to work harder. I don't have to teach anyone how to survive another day. I don't have to teach anyone how to push through the pain. I don't have to teach anyone how to clench their fists and grit their teeth and drive their head, or, lower their head and drive on it. Like, so many of us today, we have a PhD in resiliency. We have a PhD in survival. My heartbeat is to come into a room, whether I'm standing on a stage in front of 12,000 people or I'm in a room in Sundance, Utah with 20 realtors. My heartbeat is to tell my story in a way and model, really more importantly, the vulnerability through my story that allows individuals to open up their heart space just a little bit more, to drop their guard, to get out of their head, to find themselves inside of my story, because they feel emotionally safe and say yes to that next level of growth for their lives. And I find that, like, just that creating a ecosystem with emotional safety is the prerequisite to all of this growth. Like, the individuals at the Sundance experience, they experienced growth because they felt safe. And when they feel safe, they can drop their shoulders. They can exhale. They can start removing all of the pretenses and the facades and the masks that they had been hiding behind. Right. And they can really drop in and say, here I am. Here I am. And I think that what I'm really speaking to is authenticity. And authenticity isn't running around and, verbally vomiting on people like, this is who I am and this is what's happened to me. Authenticity is really allowing another person to see you, and that's like the core of who you are. And that's really the first, like, we can talk about growth all day, but there is no personal growth without that embodying that sense of authenticity, without, taking off that facade or the titles, the positions, the accolades, all of the ways you find significance and meaning. I'm not undermining them. They're beautiful. Congratulations. I love that you have achieved that in your life. But who you are at the core is so much more than that. And my question is, sure, you're successful, but are you free? That's the question we have to be starting to ask ourselves, and to step into that sense of inner freedom, that inner calm, that inner peace, to reclaim agency over our lives, to feel satisfied and proud of who we are. That requires authenticity. So I'm kind of rambling now, but I say all of that because
it makes sense, because I actually have something like a personal moment that we had, even, like off to the side when we were sitting with Ryan and Mike and our little crew, just like, chatting through some things. And I actually don't love to go deep on my own emotions and feelings because I want to be there for everyone else. So I'm always like, let me be the one to like be there to support you, to take it all in. And so, we're just chatting and we start kind of, going through these exercises with me discovering, like certain things about myself in a safe environment. And one thing that like really stuck with me that I think you'll probably remember, that it came down to, I wondered if I was my most authentic self. That's me being very childlike and playful and
yes.
if people will take me serious.
Absolutely.
And so I battle the like, I'm an attorney, I'm a CEO, I work so hard for this. Like, I want people to, when I'm in a room, to take my thoughts seriously, my actions seriously. And, and then Ryan was like, I don't know, ask Caleb, ask Mike, would you take Tiffany seriously? And what was your response? Because
absolutely. I said I would take you even more serious.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think to be able to embody that sense of play and that fun, who you are at the core, I would see that as such a tremendous act of courage. Right. And then I would see it as a courage, and I would say, I want what she has.
Yes.
Like, what allows her to be so free in life? Like, give me that. And so I would take you even more serious for sure.
So that's something that it's actually stuck with me from those few months ago of, I can try to, change who I am or be a different person. But at the end of the day, I'm going to feel best and be able to achieve results best if I'm able to be who I am. And I think that
absolutely
sharing in those moments. So that was really special. And I know that that's a lot of the work that you do so successfully, working with all these different groups. And I think, like, if you think about our agents and our members listening, it's taking that time to like really kind of tap into yourself of what makes you like the best leader, or the best, we're just calling it a leader in your, that is, that you're leading, whatever life you're leading. And it is you just being truest to yourself first, not what others expect of you.
Yeah. Which is a terrifying thing at times.
Absolutely. Right? You don't want to disappoint people.
You don't want to disappoint people. You don't want to to come to some realization that, you in fact are not enough. You don't want to be, there's just so many fears and so much childhood trauma and experiences and pain that's laced up in these experiences. And so, and this is just, this is where it's so important that we have this balance between our external pursuits and our internal expansion. Right. This like expanding within and also pursuing externally. I lost my train of thought. It's just so important that we have this balance, because these two things, as I look back on my life, when we are top heavy, when we have only focused on this external pursuit of success and there hasn't been any internal growth at some point, and this was my experience, the weight of the success that you create in your life will become the very thing that fractures your life.
Yeah.
And that's why we can see so many successful people that also hate who they are, or they actually hate their lives, or they feel so disconnected to their lives. Because there's been this drive to externally achieve, which is amazing. I'm all for that. But there has not been the opportunity to grow within. And that becomes problematic. And so the goal is oftentimes allow your pursuit of success. And this is really is kind of the heartbeat of the book that I'm writing. It's allow your pursuit of success to be a mirror that reveals and reflects back to you the fear and the insecurities and the pain that oftentimes get compartmentalized and internalized and used as ambition. Like, how many of us could say, we're achieving in our lives and we're driving to achieve because it's like this deep need to prove people wrong. Right? And that's an incredible motivator. And it's served us so well. It's taken us, from making 6 figures to maybe 7 figures. I don't know. But at some point, your growth is going to actually be centered around, why do you still need to prove people wrong? Because the problem with that is you're always going to need a conflict in your life. You're always going to need an adversary in your life to grow. And that just leaves you at some point in time at war with your life. Does this make sense? So at some point, there has to be this willing to look within, to grow within, as we are chasing that next level of success. And my work is to really help leaders, whether it's through keynotes or a workshop setting, to help engage in that dance, that balance.
So maybe ambition's gotten them so far, but what mindset shifts do they need?
What's driving the ambition?
Okay.
What is it? The fear of not being enough, the fear of, the need to prove your father wrong. Like, what's driving the ambition? That's where like the real magic, that's where the personal growth lives. That's where you don't just become somebody that exceeds expectations and it performs at your best and you do it more sustainably. That's, somebody who actually loves who they are and loves their lives in the process and has nothing left to hide. You ever seen the movie Eminem or 8 Mile? Brandon, you ever seen the movie?
Yeah, I have.
The last battle scene, the rap scene? Where Eminem, he has that last rap scene and he goes first and he's about to get demolished, but he basically says, here I am. Like, yes, this did happen. Yes, my best friend did shoot himself. Yes, my mom is a drug addict. Yes, 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 yes. And this magical moment of authenticity and really allowing himself to be fully seen, there was nothing left to hide. And the guy he was battling against, like, he had nothing left to say. And so I say all of that because when we start unearthing and excavating all of the deeply rooted pain and fear and insecurity and whatever it might be that has been used as ambition for so long, when we start looking at that and growing through that, we get to walk around in our lives with nothing left to hide. And that is the most freeing and most expansive experience we can allow ourselves to have.
So to get to that point, is that something you feel somebody could do on their own, or do they need coaching, therapy, a group?
Hire a good therapist.
You know what I mean? It's like a tragedy in your life to kind of work through.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, Brandon. I don't think necessarily the latter. Unfortunately, I think sometimes the tragedies happen to shake up the status quo, to force us to look within. Now, that doesn't mean we always say yes to that invitation or we say yes to that growth. We could just damn well drink our way through it or whatever we want to do. But I would say that I feel like a coach or a therapist is very helpful to kind of better understand the tools of, let's say, self-awareness, emotional regulation. Like, what are the tools that are going to be, let's call them plays in my new playbook. I have the playbook and I know the plays well on how to reach that new level of success. Now there's this new playbook on internal growth. It's new language, it's new plays, it's, a whole new scheme. And so finding somebody that can help you teach or help learn that language, help learn that approach is beneficial. I've been in and out of, therapy as I'm going through, some seasons that feel more tense than others, but through it all, I now have so many of the tools that I need to really be present with myself and my experience, regardless of what I'm, going through in my life, allowing that experience to be a catalyst for my next evolution of expansion, for my next evolution of growth. And I say all of that. So yeah, finding somebody that you can do this work with is wildly beneficial.
Well, and I think also finding people that you surround yourself with that are open to these types of conversations.
Yeah.
Like I always am like, I'm so grateful for the people, the friends in my life that like inspire me, that motivate me, that want to have
So good.
like want to go deeper than just like a superficial relationship. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard, like you have friends you've had forever, so you don't want to leave them behind.
Yeah, that's the hard part. And I would argue, like, I don't know if there's been a more painful experience in my life than saying goodbye to the relationships that it felt like blood and because we went through hell and back together, but I was saying yes to growth and they weren't. And at some point, they didn't want to see me to grow because they knew that would leave them with a Caleb that they no longer know. And that was like the big, really red flag for me in terms of if you cannot support my expansion and growth, you can still be in my life, but the nature of our relationship is going to change drastically. And that feels terrible because it feels like abandonment. It feels like giving it up. But really what it did for me is it got to the core of some of my codependency issues. Right? And so that just mirrored back to me a lot of codependency that I needed to work through to really learn how to set proper boundaries and really foster healthier relationships in my life. And while that season was wildly challenging, I am so grateful for it now as I look around at the connection and the relationships in the community that I have built around my life now.
Yeah, and you think about even in the business world, like you might have a team or a broker or, somebody else that's holding you back in some way from you, like actually living up to your potential. And I think just, again, doing the work to recognize what you need, what you deserve, what's in. Also, I think sometimes even in teams or like partnerships, like it's not that the person's bad or it's not a good fit for you.
And that's fine.
Or you're not a good fit for them. Like sometimes it's also the opposite of, hey, like I'm just not a great fit for you and what you want to accomplish because but having to have realizations. Yeah.
And I just want to be clear on something because this is like kind of a new keynote that I'm working on. And I think it's so important because most high achieving, most people don't realize this. Most people think that the next evolution of success for their life, to get to that next tier of success, whatever it might be, is the byproduct of just hard work, perseverance, pushing through the pain and surviving another day. And it's not true. Are those things important? Yes. But the next really prerequisite for you to stepping into that next tier of success in your life is actually creating the capacity to invite in that success. And the way I say it, or let me explain it like this. But most people don't know, because as we're talking about all of this inner growth and, the language that I use is, the pain, the fear, the insecurities. And so a lot of inner growth is centered around the hard things in life, right? But the reason why we grow, it's not just to overcome the hard things in our lives, like all that internal drama, chaos. The reason why we also grow is because that growth increases the tolerance of how much success we can actually experience in our lives. And what I mean by that is there's a theory out there called the upper limit theory. And this theory suggests that we all have an upper limit of how much success we can hold in our lives before that success becomes too much to our nervous system. And our nervous system goes, danger, danger, danger. I'm shutting it all down. And this is exactly why we can self-sabotage shit. Right? Because what happens is, and this doesn't always make sense, like why is my nervous system saying danger, danger, danger as I'm stepping into the very thing that I want the most? Well, if we think about it, like that next tier of success means more visibility, maybe more responsibility, right? It means ultimately more vulnerability. And your nervous system sees that vulnerability as danger, danger, danger. So it's going to shut it all down. So we have a threshold. We have a tolerance level of how much success we can hold in our lives before that success becomes too much and we shut it all down. And the reason why I'm saying that So if we want to actually increase our expansion or increase the success that we can hold in our lives, we actually have to grow within. We have to teach our nervous system that, hey, I'm safe. I'm safe making $350,000 a year. I'm now safe at making $500,000 a year, whatever it might be. The internal growth is oftentimes the prerequisite to the sustainability of your next level of success in your life. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just think far too many people just overlook that and they think I just got to keep surviving another day. No, you have to teach your nervous system how to be safe. And when I say teach your nervous system, I'm taught that's synonymous with inner growth.
Mm-hmm.
You have to teach your nervous system that it is safe to step into that next level of success, or that success will actually break you.
Mm-hmm.
It will fracture your well-being. It will fracture your life.
And you also hear the statements of people saying, like sometimes you have somebody saying to somebody else, you're playing small. Like, why are you playing this small? And you're playing small because it's safer there, right? Like maybe
Absolutely.
it feels
Absolutely.
better to be safer than somebody else sees it. You know you're playing small, right?
Yeah.
And,
But here's the thing, like playing small and coming out of that isn't about just trying harder, right? There is a legit process that you can engage in to teach in tolerable steps is the language that most psychologists would use, taking tolerable steps to teach your nervous system that it is safe to come out from hiding.
Mm-hmm.
It is safe to take risks. It is safe to put yourself out there. It is safe to take up space,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if we can approach it like this, we are so much more delicate with ourselves. We're infused with more compassion and empathy and kindness. Like it's not just this dog eat dog world, ruthless ambition, hustle over heart mentality. I'm going to criticize and hate myself until I stop playing small. Great, you stop playing small, but you also have criticized and hated yourself for the last 6 months or a year, and you have a very unhealthy relationship with self, which is now leading to a whole wide array of other challenges in your life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Brandon, I know you don't live when I ask questions to you, but so when you actually think about showing up as your most authentic self, like what does that person look like?
Well, first of all, I think you scheduled this podcast just for him to speak to me, because it's like,
I love this.
no, I'm getting a lot out of it. And it's like, I reflect on things that happen in my life or my business and stuff like that. And what keeps you a company or keeps you from getting to a certain place. And I've always told myself it's kind of this fear of success. What does that look like when I get to that next level? It means I've got to work harder. I've got to do more. I've got more responsibility, all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm just reflecting on a lot of stuff from this conversation. And the other thing, back a little bit, you mentioned, the decisions of moving on from people, because they're not in the same growth pattern, so to speak, as you. And I find that over my life, some of those hardest things to cut off was actually a benefit for that person too.
Yeah.
Because it caused them to be able to go and do what they need to do because maybe they were dependent on you or vice versa. So sometimes it's not always a selfish thing to do what's right for yourself because it actually helps other people.
I love that. So powerful.
And so Brandon, but if you're showing up as your most authentic self, what does that person look like? What do you?
I don't know. and that's a lot of my personality too. It's like it's not putting yourself out there, right? And it's not putting yourself out there for judgment because what I think of myself may not be what everyone else thinks, but I want everyone to think like I think about me, if that makes sense.
They should.
And so it'd be hard for me.
If you
They should.
yourself.
Yeah, I don't think low about myself for sure. So
I think also what you just did too, though, being honest with I don't know is the most authentic thing you could do in showing up in that moment. Like that was probably the most authentic you, because I know so many people who would be asked that question and they would give they would give the right answer. What about you, Tiff? How are you showing up authentic right now?
Well, right now I'm just thoroughly enjoying the moments. I think that sometimes, like I have a tendency to like 99 things that are amazing will happen. And the one thing that's like throws me off, that's negative, that, like kind of feels like an energy zap will come to me. And I know that's life, but then I'll sometimes tend to like want to make that one thing like wrong, like fix it, make somebody else feel better, like figure out how to navigate it. And instead of focusing on like all of the great things that have happened,
Yeah.
just let the one thing get to me. And I think that at the end, and those days are actually a lot harder days for me because then I just feel like I spend so much of my energy like playing, all these things over in my head. And then it's not even going towards the things that could actually move the needle, make a difference, put us on track. And so I think just like really kind of, pausing in those moments and being present. And so like right now in this moment, I feel just so present and, like just I'm loving these conversations because these feel like just so just like real. I just love real talk. I don't love again, having conversations of the things we're supposed to say. I just love, like this kind of conversation. So right this minute, I feel fantastic.
I love it. I love it.
Incredible humans that I know like lead with your heart and, show up for those around you like consistently. And so I feel great. I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. More than enough. More than enough.
Always more than enough. So when you think about like right now, like again, you've put yourself out there for so many years in so many different spaces. And I know like, going from working, as a keynote, so with large audiences where you're like, am I connecting? Like it's almost harder, right? For you to feel like, unless I hear a laugh or somebody crying, is my message getting across? Like, how are you growing? And I think that also for those that want to get out and like speak in public or they're putting themselves out on social media reels, like how are you knowing if you're connecting and does that matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. It matters and it doesn't matter, I think, from my personal experience. I think the way that I'm growing and the way that I have been growing is because I'm very comfortable with talking about healing and pain and all of the things that are kind of like taboo or they have stigma around them. For whatever reason, so when I started sharing my story years ago on social, I was pretty much an open book. And it wasn't like this, I didn't know what performative vulnerability was at that time, like trying to be vulnerable because it's what's, approved of today. And so you see a lot of leaders trying to be vulnerable. I was never trying to be vulnerable. I was just vulnerable. And because I would talk so openly about the shame and the grief and the despair and the helpless and hopelessness that I've experienced, the dark places, and I would bring people into those dark places with me through the use of my words and storytelling, I got on a stage and I try to do the same thing. And it's a lot. Right? Like people are, especially if you're like in an organization where they're like, whoa, we need to know how to like increase our ROI here. Like, what are you talking about? And so I got kind of hit in the face early on in my speaking career where I see it differently now, but at that time I kind of internalized it as you're too much, dial it back. And so then I got really insecure on stage with trying to stay true to myself, but communicate a message that's still inspiring and expansive and growth centered. But what had happened is I would stand on stage for the longest time and I would be like, the energy that I would embody is it good? Is it good? Is it good? Tell me it's good. Please tell me it's good. Like, is it enough? Am I enough? Like, please pick me. Like this really gross energy that comes from a place of deficit. I call it deficit energy. And the growth has been like really revisiting those former experiences, rewriting the stories around them that I told myself, seeing them for what they truly are, coming back in alignment with who I am, and just kind of practicing my skill set on how to tell stories in a new way that they can communicate the same message, but they're so much more relatable. They're so much more approachable. They're so much more delicate where people, sure, you've never had this experience, but I just found myself in your experience through your use of language and storytelling. And as I have grown and said yes to that, and a lot of this work happened really at the beginning of the year for me, I'm no longer standing on a stage wondering if I'm connecting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer standing on a stage in my head saying, pick me, or is it enough? Or is it good? Is it good? Is it good? I'm there to truly help other people. That's the energy that I embody. Like, I'm already more than enough. And I'm coming from that place of wholeness and that abundance, that centeredness, that rootedness. And I'm now delivering my message from that place. And that has changed the most for me as a speaker in my message. And so I say all of that because that's kind of like the growth that I've been leaning into, which has been very vulnerable. It's been messy. It's hard to stand on the stage trying to work that out in real time. I've looked like a fool more times than I can count, and I know I've received some feedback that was not very kind, that kind of just like was debilitating to read when this is my life's work. And I'm so grateful that I just continue to say yes to this evolution of growth, to put perfectionism on the back burner of my life and realize that I'm in the trenches. I'm in the arena, right? Like, I am actively growing, and that's easily, something that I've become so wildly proud of in my life. And I think for anyone else that's trying to speak, it's the intention behind why you're speaking. That energy matters. That energy is what actually makes people feel either connected to you or, not connected to you. And so really getting honed in on that is important.
Well, you do an incredible job, because I've never put on a football uniform, never gone to West Point, never slept as a janitor on the floor, but I've, felt with such, like true, like deep emotion, so many of those moments with you. So,
Thanks, Steph.
You're doing everything right. And so we're really grateful and lucky to have you just as a part of our Realtor family. Or we're claiming you as part of our Realtor family.
Yes, sign me up.
Continue to come back and work with us. And how can others find you? I know I've shared, because people say, like, who is he? What does he do? But please let us know if somebody wants you to come to their broker's office, or have a big event, or we can work one-on-one, what that looks like.
Well, they can reach out to you and you can give them my information. Or you can find me at my website. It's just calebcampbell.me. M as in Mike, E as in Echo. So calebcampbell.me. And the contact form goes straight to me. I'm not too active on social media these days, with a 8-week-old at home and a 2.5-year-old on top of that. And so social media is not a priority to me these days, but I always get back to folks who end up in my inbox. And so this is probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Thanks, Caleb. And Brandon, do you have any final thoughts for Caleb?
Well, I would just say thank you. Thank you for today, and thank you for everything you've done for the Nevada Realtors. And we look forward to a long and healthy relationship with you.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Caleb.